to this, we're live. I'm never confident enough to just crack on. So if any of you can give me a thumbs up whenever you see it flash up on your devices. It says live on Zoom. Got a thumbs up from you guys. Brilliant. Lovely. We'll crack on then. Therapy Live Newscast number 7. We've been launching each of the streams that we've got planned for Therapy Live, which is the 26th of June 2020. Now, 3 working weeks away. Lots of exciting stuff going on where we've got the full agenda being announced. I'm actually going to leak that a little bit, do a screen share and leak some of that today. I know we've been getting some pressure for people wanting to know exactly the dates and times so they can plan their schedule across 9 streams of education covering clinical, business, policy. We've also got a whole body covered for you, upper limb, lower limb and spinal pain. This is the session for the Upper Limbposium, still one of my favourite puns I've come up with, and we have come up with a number of cheesy puns. We are the Physio Matters podcast, of course, business called Choose Health. We've run lectures called Thinking in Public and all sorts of different plays on words. However, this one, the Limbposium, very proud of it. Lots of cringes, got lots of heckles and hate mail about it, but we're not bothered. I'll be showing you a few of the titles of what we've got in store, and we'll do a lap of this room, but it's worth mentioning who's unfortunately not able to join us, and some of that is due to my mistake. Unfortunately, Andrew Jaggy won't be joining us tonight, in part because she's not been receiving some of our emails. We've had some miscommunications, and so we've not been able to clarify exactly what the title's going to be, but it's going to be in and around shoulder instability. So thank you, Andrew, for joining Therapy Live, but unfortunately can't be with us tonight. Nina Schmid came up with what is absolutely brilliant excuse, and certainly she's doing something better with her time tonight, which is working on the coronavirus vaccine trial at Oxford, which is, of course, taking up a lot of her time, and that's a fair excuse, absolutely. And Deb Stanton's not able to join us tonight, but as I've said and confirmed with the others, she's talking about wrists and hands, which, of course, they'll be able to fill in for her and cover all of that. Just because she's not able to join us doesn't mean we can't all talk about our fingers and thumbs. But without further ado, let me share with you all the Upper Limbposium stream. This is what you've got to look forward to. You tune into this. Now, you don't have to stay in your seat. You'll be able to pick and choose across different streams, or you can just gorge on this content, which will be, and it's not in order. We'll be leaking that in a little while. But this is what you've got to look forward to, and these are the folk that can be educating you on the day on the 26th. Now, we're flashing this back up on screen intermittently over the course of this chat. But what I will do is, first off, go to my usual partner in crime, Jack March, aka Jim, the other Jack, who, to be honest, mate, you're a bit of an imposter in the Upper Limbposium, surely. Usually chatting all things Axi-ISPA or anything rheumatological, yet here you are, you had the pick of the streams, you've been the organizer, chief organizer, yet you've put yourself in here. What are you doing in Upper Limbposium?
Yeah, it's a bit like that. Well, I thought, I'm making the educational content, I've got to get myself in there, wedge myself in because no one else is going to ask. So, I thought what I do is challenge myself. So as you said, normally I'm talking about spines and often lower limbs with regards to rheumatology, but actually if you ask most physios and therapists what rheumatology would mean to them, then they'd say rheumatoid arthritis and it'd be the hands, and I always shy away. So what I decided to do was challenge myself and make it difficult, and I'm going to attempt to do a clinical reasoning process through the talk. So we're going to start off with a case, and then I'm going to try to show how you could very easily miss a rheumatology case if you don't know what you're asking for, if you miss the clues. So a bit like any type of screening process, but how it's very, very easy to, you might even have appropriate information, but if you're not linking the things together, then you're going to come to the wrong conclusion. So I'm going to attempt to do that. And hopefully that will direct people towards some more awareness around rheumatology conditions, because we're still not good enough at managing them or diagnosing them and referring onwards. So that's the plan. I'm going to try not to go near the elbow or the shoulder. In fact, I'm not really going to try and go near the hand. I'm just going to fake it and just talk about rheumatology, but just pretend that other limbs exist and that I need to know about them.
Right, you're going to do generic rheumatology lookouts and then just mention at the end that they also sometimes happen in the upper limb. Brilliant.
Something like that, yeah.
What a fantastic sales pitch. I'm so glad I started with you tonight, mate. That's been absolutely brilliant. For those 3 of you that are still with us, we'll now move around the room. Yeah, brilliant. No, thanks, Jim. I have taken for granted that people know who you are. Tell us a little bit about you, your business, and also I know you're also you've got a stand at Therapy Live where you're selling some of your very popular bits and pieces. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I do run rheumatology CPD days and half days and all sorts of CPD content. I've got my website rheumatology.physio where there's some free stuff. And that's where all the links are to that. And then I think I've got some here. I've got these little booklets that I make. This one's on rheumatology. It's got different conditions. And then Cuffy, you got one, Cuffy, on front of you? I haven't got one of yours. Cuffy's done a spinal masquerade as one as well, which is really good. I might have one here. Look, here we go. Let's do some good advertising. My sales pitch was terrible for my talk, so here we go. So the spinal masquerade is one as well. And they just reference guides where you can get up to 10 conditions in there. And as you said, I am going to have got a stand. So I'm going to be launching a couple of new things, which are a little bit secret at the moment on the day. So there'll be first access for anybody that's attending. I've got a new one of those books and some other stuff that I'm going to release as well on the day. So be worth coming just for that. So my talk will be rubbish, but my stand will be good.
Brilliant. Right. Well, you nearly saved it there with some product placement. So it was a better sales pitch. I thought you were going to say, there's none of Cuffy's here. They've all sold out. I thought that was going to be a nice little...
Well, they have. That was the draft copies. That's the one with the errors in it.
Okay. Fair enough. Oh, brilliant. No, looking forward to that. I think differential diagnosis of the upper limb gets visited plenty, but seldom really inflammatory conditions or some of the rarer bits and pieces. So no, really looking forward to that. I think that'll be smart. Val, you were the next in the lobby, and so we're going to go in that order. You did a really popular Physio Matters podcast. I think it was last year or maybe even the year before that, but still something that's really one of our most heavily downloaded of that year, certainly. You mentioned the George Harrison of the upper limb, the often neglected elbow. Although of the elbow conditions, you are going to be at least your title mentions the tennis elbow, which is obviously
it does. And you talked about puns, so I'm going to talk about the hinge that makes clinicians cringe, the elbow. So it's not only you that come up with rhymes, Meakins. So as I said, I think the elbow it gets a lot of bad press. It's been called many things, unforgiving, nasty, and it's not. It's just a joint that needs to be looked after and well respected. Give it a little virtual hug in these days of social distancing. So yeah, we will be talking about all things tennis elbow, but then we're going to talk about lots of other things as well later on. Now, do you want me to carry on, or are you going to go across to somebody else?
No, please. You were on a roll there. Carry on, and also tell folk a little bit about you if they don't know about you. You just carry on.
So yeah, clinical specialist physio at the Sheffield Shoulder and Elbow Unit, and I work with a team of 4 surgeons, team of great physios as well. And one of our previous surgeons was an elbow specialist surgeon that really promoted my interest, David Stanley, who's now retired. He was sort of a fabulous elbow surgeon, and he's now got his protege Amjad Ali that works there, who's almost full-time elbow surgeon, and again fantastic. So they pretty much give me carte blanche to sort of rehab patients as we like, as long as I can find some evidence and make sure we're not putting patients at harm. They let me sort of mobilize them early, argue with them. If I can give them the evidence, they'll let me run with it.
Oh, fantastic. And that sort of exploratory style meant that your trial and error process came good eventually then for you to stick in a job that clearly you didn't hurt anyone. That's good.
Not quite. I've never had to hand anybody's arm back and say, I'm sorry, it fell off in the middle of things. No, you said you can find centres that are doing things faster than we are and you're not having any adverse effects. I'm happy to start mobilising them early.
Fantastic. Well, talking of arms falling off, Joe Gibson, you talk about unstable shoulders quite a lot. Do you see what I did there? I should be on radio, shouldn't I? It was very sweet indeed. What a transition. But in this instance...
yeah, you knocked me off that one.
I know, great, wasn't it? Caught you out. So the topic of your talk has drawn a lot of interest. It's actually been mentioned on a number of the other newscasts. Something that me and you talked about when thinking about how to integrate you into this Upper Limbposium. You've worked on a few different topics, and we've asked a lot of your previous Big R's events, for example, to lean into other different talks and titles. What's this one?
Well, Jack, I have you to thank for that. I think because Angie wanted to do the unstable shoulder, I needed a slot. But I think I mentioned the phrase brain-rich rehab on one of the podcasts that I did. And I think you then quoted me as saying cognitive rich rehab, which is where this has all come from. And I guess it's, if Val says the elbow's thick, I think the shoulder is like the attention monster of the upper limb. It just loves sensory attention. And to me, we kind of see gurus out there doing magic things with shoulders and making it all look like some masterclass of effecting change. But I think there's just some really, really simple ways we can use the sensory motor system to facilitate confident movement in our patients. There's so much emphasis on self-efficacy at the moment, and experiential learning and successful achievement of a task is a big part of that. So for me, I love the title. It's just about, the evidence now gives us some clues, people who've had pain for longer than 6 months, some potential things that we could do better right from the outset. And yes, of course, some of that's in the psychosocial domain, but I also just think with a bit more creativity with some of our exercise, not being fancy, but just using that sensory motor system in terms of our visual system and other sensory systems to just enhance their impact and maybe preempt some of those problems by giving patients the ability to move confidently. So yeah, it's a bit of an indulgence, I guess, really, a chance to really try and put a simple take on things that can just enhance your exercise prescription. And so, yeah, I'm quite looking forward to it, actually.
Oh, brilliant. I'm glad I didn't throw you something that you've now, it could have been quite awkward on air for you to say, I don't know why you've given me this.
I'll just beat you up later. It's fine.
We've got some comments more than questions coming in. Feel free to get your questions to our panel, our speakers for the Upper Limbposium. But we've got some comments coming in, which are always fun as well. People mentioning how comfy Jack March's chair looks, which it does. It especially looks comfy when he looks like he's about to fall asleep in between times as well. It's been a long day.
I spent a lot of money on this chair, so it better be comfortable.
Oh, did you? We pay you too much. Good point. Now, we're going to then move on to Adam Meakins. Joe mentioned attention seekers, and I nearly cut her off and brought you in on that point. You're talking on frozen shoulders this time. You're usually a shoulder man generally, but you fancied the frozen shoulder topic, which I don't think I've heard you speak on before.
No, although I've put the word frozen in there, I'm going to be talking about the stiff shoulder, of which the frozen shoulder is part of it. But I've just got quite a recent fascination with stiffness recently. I don't know whether it's because I'm getting older in my life, I don't know, but I just seem to be a bit more interested in what is stiffness, what is stiffness, what causes stiffness, and what actually is true pathological stiffness, and what are the other causes of stiffness. And I find there's a lot of people that have some misconceptions about what stiffness is and what needs to be done to try and rectify something that feels stiff. So what I'm going to be doing, as I say, is discussing the various different types of stiffness, be that pathological stiffness, which the term frozen shoulder is often used for, that, the capsule thickening inflammation process that goes on there. So we know there's pathological causes for restriction in range of movement, but then I'm also going to be talking about other causes of restriction in movement, and that can be simply pain and fear and guarding and protection. So I'm going to be trying to see if we can delve a little bit into that and see why some people have these protective mechanisms that go a little bit into overdrive, go a bit haywire, why that happens and how we can best deal with it, and see if there is something there that we can look to try and use clinically, that we can see if we can elucidate and differentiate a true pathological stiffness versus a other type of stiffness, and then how best to deal with it and how best to treat it.
No, it's really interesting. I think that's always those grey areas that people are concerned about, is when they've got something that they don't feel is like overtly ticking all the classic boxes for a frozen shoulder, but some of the behaviours are similar. They end up just almost falling between pathways or falling between mechanisms of treatment or even mechanisms of pathology that they're not sure about. And so, no, I'm really interested to hear about that. For those that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're up to these days.
Well, I'm a trauma and orthopaedic upper limb specialist, so I work for the West Herts Trust part-time. So I'm there doing my triaging for the upper limb trauma and complex orthopaedic elective cases as well. I work privately. I have an online consultation business which has been blooming and flourishing recently for some unknown reason, because I don't know why, maybe it's viruses or whatever, but I've been doing online consultations privately for the last couple of years. And I'm also now involved with an online learning platform called the Better Clinician Project with my mate. I think I can call him a mate now. We've got over our differences. We've hugged and kissed and made up, Ben Cormack. And so we are using this online learning education platform to just try and have a little bit of fun, but also create a little bit of entertainment and education along the way as well. And it's good to see it's being replicated and imitated as well across in various different platforms. Not going to mention any names, of course, Jack, but it's nice to see that other people are following our example.
Yeah, well, talking of imitation, you run a podcast, don't you?
Oh, yes. Yes, I have. Yeah, thank you very much for mentioning.
Anyway, Andrew Cuff, you've joined us. That's fantastic. Thank you for joining us. You've been talking a lot about various different types of shoulder pathology and being rather pedantic about what we call them for many years now. So what have you got in store for us at Therapy Live, mate?
Sure. Just let me know if my audio cuts out. I know we had a few issues. What am I talking about? I was talking about the rotator cuff. That was it. But I'm talking about it from a perspective of community MSK. So those that you might be seeing in primary care or community care before they get into the hospitals and before they get into the specialist upper limb clinics. How can we approach that population of patients and what might we want to consider? So hopefully thinking a little bit around prognostic factors, a simplified approach to assessment. But then hopefully we'll be bringing also a case of how we need to move beyond body part silos, which would be quite ironic in a conference stream focused on the upper limb. Hopefully you can see what good MSK practice looks like is transferable no matter what the condition is. So that's what I'll be talking about in my session.
Got most of that. It is a bit robotic, I'm afraid.
On a work laptop, so I think I'm going to blame the work laptop. The IT's poor.
Yeah, the audio is so distorted. The audio is so distorted. You didn't sound as posh. Now, what's the balance really with regards to your talk on terms of the clinical side? Which I mean, we've covered some of your stuff on that before, and it's really thorough with regards to the rationale for why you pick on some of the terminologies as well as what you feel is going on with regards to the pathology, call it SAPS or rotator cuff related shoulder pain. And then but the talk sort of the title sort of hints towards you then talking about pathway management and policy a little bit as well, because that's clearly something you're passionate about at the moment.
Yeah, more clinically than pathway, but we'll be drawing on some of the early outputs of my PhD, which looked at clinical practice guidelines, and in particular looking at clinical practice guidelines that are well quoted in the UK, some challenges around those guidelines, and hopefully give some insight as to why they may not have been implemented as well as they could be, and how that maps back to development. So hopefully a little bit around some challenges and some future direction in terms of how we might want to develop guidelines for clinical practice. I think that'll probably be a small part of the talk. The majority of it is going to be talking about what can you do in clinic and what you do for the vast majority of kind of generalist clinicians that are going to be seeing rotator cuff-related shoulder pain out in the community setting.
Oh, brilliant! No, really looking forward to that. Now, I'll pull the share screen back up on this agenda. Well, it's not an agenda; it's not got the times on it yet. I will leak that in a little while. Get your questions coming in for the speakers if you haven't already. But it's worth me mentioning at this point the folk that aren't here, unfortunately. And so again, that's mainly my fault, especially with regards to Andrew not getting our emails. So we'll be sorting that out. But Andrew's got a talk planned for us about the unstable shoulder, some of her brilliant work. that many will be aware of, especially in and around air traumatic instability. Nina Schmid is going to be talking about some of her latest on carpal tunnel syndrome, emerging evidence for therapy management, one of the leading researchers in entrapment neuropathy, and carpal tunnel is sort of the archetypal, I would say, entrapment neuropathy, and especially one that some of the crispest research can come out of that, especially because it's sort of being something that's almost that plays into that stereotype of entrapment and compression-based pathology, where it's something that's easily triaged and therefore easily categorized in research terms. And so there's some really fascinating work going on in her lab, and so looking forward to that insight. Deb Stanton, we a talk planned with Deb's at the Elevate event that was going to be taking place in June time, and one of the things I really enjoyed working that up with her was this idea that sometimes people will just associate hand therapy with either just splinting and range of movement exercise and then just punting it elsewhere. And I've certainly been guilty of that before, but she's going to be just trying to help us to understand what the evidence-based care is of the hand, which I think will be really fascinating, and certainly something that in this Upper Limbposium would have been remiss of us to miss out. And I think that's everyone. Is that, I haven't missed anyone else out? Nope, that's good. So we will stop share on that. Right. Joe, I want to ask you, what is it? I guess you're someone that is known most for upper limb stuff, but also does, as proven in your recent tour, doing some biopsychosocial talks, etc. It means that you're obviously interested in the broad scope of MSK. Are you looking forward? What else are you looking forward to on the show? Do you find yourself just wanting to hone in on this room, or are you going to go flirting elsewhere?
Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing all the talks in the Upper Limb Symposium, obviously, and I think all the guys here are I'm genuinely looking forward to it, because you just never stop learning and reflecting. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bit mind blowing how much choice there is, and there's people I've heard so much about, like Elaine Miller and Sandy Hilton, that I've never had the privilege of hearing talk. There's some kind of great clinicians out there that are making a huge contribution. There's Greg Lehman, there's Martin from Kent. There's so many different people, and lots of different people I respect that I've maybe been on their courses or heard them do podcasts. So I'm looking forward to the timetable, Jack, so I can actually work out how I'm going to listen to the people that I want to. But yeah, spoilt for choice, really. And but that's what's fun, always learning and always reflecting.
No, brilliant. Yeah, and I won't leave you all hanging too much longer on that. And certainly we've been just delaying on the final pieces to it. We're always tempted. We get it about 90% there, and then it just takes a little bit longer just to tidy it up. And we're always reluctant to release it with lots of gaps or TBCs in it and stuff. So we wanted to finalize it and strengthen it, which is ready for. It's with the designers. It's out tomorrow, but I will leak a messier version of it tonight. Adam, similarly, you're someone that. Certainly known for your clinical work in the upper limb and obviously what your work at the moment, but you're also someone that pays attention to those broader issues around MSK. And we've tried to be as broad across the streams as possible. What are you looking forward to on the show?
I think I'm probably going to go and definitely try and listen to, was it Andrew McCauley, to listen to him talk, because I think he's got a good outlook on physiotherapy rehab. He seems to have similar views and opinions to me, so I just want to go and get my biases stroked. I'm hoping there nicely, so I'm definitely looking forward to that, and then I might even venture into some manual therapy talks as well, and just see if there's anything there that, again, I can perhaps challenge my biases and see if there's something there that perhaps I've missed or I need to know about.
Yeah, the next newscast on Wednesday, so 8 o'clock on Wednesday, is the physical therapies. Jim, you're hosting that, aren't you? And what we've tried to do is just try to get some of the voices who are the most sensible people advocating for adjuncts in practice and integrating them into rehab, including two brilliant massage therapists, Matthew Scarsbrook and I forget. Hold on.
Leah Dwyer.
Leah Dwyer. You see, Leah, I didn't forget who it was, but I keep getting your surname wrong. And we've had another Leah who's been contacting us saying that she's been named as a speaker at Therapy Live. So that's why I was double checking. I was about to get the surname wrong again. Sorry. So Matthew and Leah are speaking on massage therapy as massage therapists, but how they integrate that within a broader rehab model and the what they consider a thorough understanding of the mechanism of effect of their interventions through the evidence, but also how they feel that is still a worthy contribution within healthcare. And so there's a few different things like that where I do hope that exposure to that, Adam, had softened your hardline stance and help you to understand those other aspects that can be out there. Certainly Andrew Macaulay is certainly one that I can imagine will stroke your bias. He was caught out the other day on a newscast by Matthew Wyatt saying, is there any use for it? If you're good at rehab, do you need any adjuncts? And he gave a very Meakins-esque answer initially and said, no.
I was proud. I was proud.
Did you see that? Is that why you've become a fanboy? I wondered if you'd seen that. Brilliant. Okay. Well, I'm glad that there's a few things across streams that you guys are interested in. I wondered if you might be binging on the upper limb content. I know the lower limb, the lower Limbposium, was saying that they were going to be loyalists to their stream. They were getting a bit tribal about it.
Well, again, the lower limb specialist, all you got to do is just tell them to squat, and that's everything done. You know, you've got it all done and dusted in one go. So you've got Eric in there as well, haven't you, Eric?
Yeah.
So I've heard him talk about 33 times before, so I don't need to go and listen to him again.
All right, so yeah, I'm going to say that's something that hopefully is bringing something new. But yeah, you probably heard plenty.
It'll be squats and quads. That's all it will be.
Fair enough. Val, with regards to the elbow, one of the things that I came to realise as well on this is that it's still a bit of a shoulder heavy lineup. Is that something you judge as heavy for, or are you going to do such a good job of the elbow that it doesn't need anyone else anyway?
I'm just going to tell everybody and give them the reasons why the elbow is so much more important than the shoulder. So I'll give him the reason when we have the talk. But no, I'm just glad it's in there, to be perfectly honest. It's often overlooked, so it's nice to get to talk about it. At least it's not been completely forgotten. So, you know, I'll talk about it for as long as necessary.
No, fantastic. Anything else you're looking forward to on this stream or elsewhere?
Well, you see, I'm going to go over to the lower limb, you see, and listen to Seth. And I'm also looking forward to Jack from the rheumatology point of view, because we see a lot of rheumatology patients, obviously, in our clinic, and early onset ones. We had one the other week that was sent through before lockdown with a tennis elbow, and he came in with a painful elbow with fingers that looked like a packet of premium sausages. They were that enlarged, sort of hugely sort of raised inflammatory markers, and we had to send him over. So he was an early onset inflammatory arthritis, and we see quite a lot in the clinic.
That's my talk ruined. Thanks, Val.
Oh, sorry.
Fingers.
Spoiler alert. Brilliant. Jim, you've been, fair to say, you're fairly close to all the content, right? You know everything about everything that we've been doing. You've been running this show, so I know that you're gonna have some work stuff to do as well. But let's try and imagine that you're just going to be able to have free run of it as a consumer, as a delegate. What would you be tuning into? And I mean live. You're going to have access to all of it afterwards. But what about live?
I the other day decided that what I would do is pick. So I would go to every single stream. So I'd make sure I picked at least one talk from every stream, because it'd be very, very easy for me to just ignore the entirety of pelvic health, the entirety of physical therapies, and the entirety, it would be very easy for me to do that. My main job role is in triage, like Adam is, and I don't do much rehab at all, so it would be very easy for me to skip those, but I think there's loads for me to learn over in those locations. I'm really interested to go to Benoy is talking about shockwave. I'm really interested to go and do that, because I'm struggling to get my head around shockwave in a number of different ways, so I'm really interested to go and listen to him. But also definitely Joe mentioned, I can't know if Joe or Val mentioned Elaine Miller. I just want to go see Elaine Miller because she's going to be hilarious. And she's
funny jokes, mate. That's all it's for, isn't it?
I know. And to pre-leak the leak, she's on at the same time as Meakins, so at least that means I don't have to go listen to him. But also, we've also got Melissa Farmer talking about sex and pain, and it's something that I get more of in my clinics than I would.
Sex? Sorry? What sex?
Well, more questions around that. I need to be asking more in depth about it with people who have hip pain and pelvic pain and all these kind of things. And I don't feel confident in it as well as I should do. So I'll definitely be trying to make that.
You don't feel confident having sex?
Oh no, mate.
I think that's
Have you seen my fridge?
Somebody else you might need to go and talk to about that, then, mate.
Well, I'm hoping that will give me some tips, mate.
You've done fairly well there. He really did his best to throw you off, and you did fairly well. Kept your composure there, Jimbo. Again,
I know. Well, I was talking of his Better Clinician project. I'd speak to him for an hour the other week on that, so I've got some practice in.
Got some practice. You're getting used to his heckles. There,
exactly.
But yeah, Melissa Farmer, speaking on the pelvic health stream, a neuroscientist and sexologist who has a massive knowledge base with regards to the ways in which our neurobiology is influenced, and certainly keeps an eye on the MSK literature. Has been also involved in a really interesting project bringing sort of CBT and AI to the fore for MSK care. So she's a really interesting character that's not in the therapies game, but certainly someone that brings a lot to therapy live. So there's a few people that have mentioned to me that they're looking forward to it. And again, the pressure that we've been feeling for when things are on and which sessions are going to clash, etc. Andrew, I want to ask you the same question to contestant number 5, really. What else are you looking forward to?
I just sort of flicked through the programme while the others were talking because I haven't had a chance to have a look. But what I am going to look at, I think, is I'm not going to go to the lower limb purely because I think it's just a big arm, isn't it? The lower limb. So I think that's pretty much boxed off in the Upper Limbposium. No, in all seriousness, probably look at Derek Griffin. I think he's a great talker, and hearing him speak about exposure therapy. And again, I think some of those principles will be applicable beyond the spine. And also in the business of therapy strand, which I think could be relabeled something around leadership as well. So I think the last couple of talks from Malcolm Sloan and Phil Badley around systems, projects and feedback and the leadership theme. So if that came through in the audio, those would be the 2 areas that I'll be looking for on the day.
No, I think that's the business we've had, especially off the back of Friday's newscast, we had a really big spike in people interested in the business of therapy side. And Mike James asked a great question about how relevant it would be for those that aren't necessarily in private practice and the applicability of some of the skills that they're going to be talking about. Also, we had to sort of explain throughout that stream that those are the best in the game at making sure they're offering some sort of business angle that isn't then just selling sickness and compromising ethics. These are people that recognize the wider understanding of healthcare. And also I think we need a broadly mature analysis, and there's a bit of this that's going to happen on the MSKR stream as well, which I'll again announce some of the titles of in a second. Is the private sector is going to need to help support the nation's healthcare needs as we try and get back to what is considered a new normal post-COVID. And there's going to be various different things that have been held up and waiting lists that are going to end up spiking. And so we need better integration, better understanding, and also be able to find a way to promote good practice across the board in healthcare. And so often neglected. And so I'm pleased to be able to bring that forward. And I do agree, Andrew. I think it's going to be something that's going to pique everyone's interest. And having heard what they've got in store, I think it's going to be something that's applicable across sectors and for various therapists. So no, really looking forward to that. Just going to throw to some of your questions and have a little look as to see what you've got in store for us there. Again, comments as well as questions such as, Jack Chew, where's your gin, lemonade and bamboo straw? That's from Oliver Sell. I don't know what on earth he would expect me to be having that for, but I suspect that's what he's saying, is that he can't imagine me drinking that because I'm just not classy enough. I think that's what he's inferring.
He meant me. That's what I had the other week.
Oh,
when I was when I did the Lower Limbposium, this version of this stream, and I had a gin lemonade with a bamboo straw, and it was absolutely rank.
Yeah, but yours wasn't the biggest bamboo straw, was it?
It was not, no. Mind you, I think Seth's was more like a bamboo steak.
I'm giving more bloody sexual dysfunctions now.
I was going to say, there's a bit of a theme tonight. It's slightly concerning.
Leave me alone.
You can tell I haven't watched that back for me to not know that.
Yeah.
The a comment.
You've got the kettlebell behind you as well, Jack, just for decoration purposes.
And sorry.
I can see you've still got the kettlebell in the background, just for decoration purposes as well.
Does it look as dusty as it is? Does it look as unused and neglected as it is? All of the gym equipment, all of the gym equipment that came from Choose Health HQ back home at the start of lockdown still goes unused. Although I have two growing weights that I shoulder press intermittently to try and keep entertained, as is the twins, which is what's keeping me from doing it. It's also the reason why I've put on 3 stone and grown a neck beard. I can now see that. Well, that's why you do it, Meakins, to hide the chins. It's sort of the usual move. I can see that.
He hides the double chins, mate. Can hide a lot.
Yeah.
Can hide a lot of things behind a beard.
That and the box that I put my laptop on is just getting higher and higher. I'm going to be finishing lockdown up here, trying to hide my chins. So that's going to happen. We've had a comment from Matthew Scarsbrook, one of the massage therapists that I was raving about earlier when Adam mentioned that he was going to go in float in that stream for a little bit. And he said he thinks that being challenged by Meakins during a therapy live talk would count as a career highlight. I think he's looking forward to it. He's looking forward to that challenge. Certainly, it'd be really interesting to see if ever I was confident that someone being able to change and soften your stance on it is someone that shares many of your views, but then does feel that there is roots and integration for that style of therapy into healthcare, which is going to be great. So yeah, I want to make sure I witness that as best I can. That will be great. Get your questions coming in, guys. Andrew McCauley notes that rehab is still the only full house group, and so he's feeling like that was a momentous occasion for them. I was saying that it's no surprise that the exercise rehab stream were all very diligent and punctual and specific. So that was no surprise to me.
Probably because they just had nothing else better to do. The rest of us are working too bloody hard. That's what it is.
Brilliant. I've got a comment here. What else we got? Oh no, just more heckles. Gemma Oliver said that the biopsychosocial talk she caught in Manchester was ace, and I think when people love it when you diversify away from the upper limb. This is certainly going to be more within scope, but it sort of bridges that gap a little bit, doesn't it? That did you ever feel like you were pigeonholed with unstable shoulders or even just shoulders?
And I remember you saying to me actually that everybody just thinks you treat unstable shoulders, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that.
Me then, that sounds cruel, doesn't it? So it's on me. Right?
I was like, God, I need to get out of that. It's what I do for my job. It's what I'm employed to do. But I think the opportunity, the communication side is always something that's been massively important to me. My dad was a psychiatrist. He revolutionized how communication skills training was done for medical students. So we didn't talk very much, ironically. I wish we had talked more because he was quite a useful resource in retrospect. But yeah, that's always been at the heart of what I do, and I think why I do what I do. So having the opportunity to do the talk for the 3 hours was awesome, but it's probably allowed me also to develop that side of things and explore that a little bit more. So yeah, that's why it's always fun to do something slightly outside your comfort zone, like Jack was saying, because it kind of makes you learn and have to kind of formulate your thoughts a little bit more.
No, that's interesting. I want to ask that question to a few of you, really, is that Jim, you are someone that is known under rheumatology and teaches under rheumatology, but then that means that you do visit various different body parts, including upper limb bravely this time. Are you bothered about that specialist angle, or is that something that's just because that's what you do, that's what you love, and you don't mind?
Yeah, I suppose. I think it becomes you sort of become a little bit onto cruise control sometimes, don't you? When you talk about things, you talk about a lot, and I think it's good to mix it up. I do different things on my courses depending on what departments I go to and the demographics of the physios I talk to, but if you zoomed out a little bit, they're all very similar. So it's interesting to do something a little bit different. I don't think anybody would get me in talking about something of a mechanical nature. I don't know what I'm doing. So the only time I ever get to speak is on rheumatology. And I don't know why well, I know why it is this time because I'm the one who put the agenda together. So you know, I think you do have to push the boat sometimes, challenge yourself, and that's where we end up with things that are fun, but also things where other people can learn. Because if I'm pushing myself, then hopefully other people will be pushing themselves to to be better when they're listening as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Val, I've got a great question that's come in for you. What percentage of the caseload do you see ends up being recalcitrant tennis elbow?
Oh, not a lot really, because I think it is getting treated fairly well out in primary care. You know, things like injections have dropped off now, hopefully. So people are treating it better, and also explaining to patients, you know, you do need to stick with it and stick with it for a while longer. So we don't see many sort of tennis elbows up in secondary care. What we do see sometimes are the ones that maybe weren't the tennis elbows in the first place. They might have a subtle instability. They may even, so we saw somebody who'd been an overhead thrower in the past, and they'd lost their end range sort of extension, and it turned out they got OA in the elbow. So we don't see much tennis elbow up in secondary care.
Oh,
So it's usually been fairly well dealt with our colleagues in primary care.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because the questioner clearly thinks that might be a real big chunk, but I'm pleased to hear that that's being dealt with where it should be, because it would be a failure of the system in many ways, wouldn't it, if you were seeing lots of it?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it's just about talking through with the patient about what they need to do, but also about the timescale. And if you leave this for a year, you know, 90+% of these sort of conditions are going to, tennis elbow is going to clear up within the year. And it's about reassuring the patient as well. And I think, you know, the Louis Gifford reassurance is a bloody good painkiller is great with that one. So it's about just making sure that you talk to the patient, communicate well with them, and they understand the condition more.
No, it's interesting. Now, I know it's not a frozen shoulder talk, Adam. Now, you reminded us of the glamorous title of it being mainly about stiff shoulders and the various degrees in which they could or couldn't be frozen. But that's another condition in which, as Val's saying there, it can be something that can wane in time. But if that is the assurance that's sometimes given by therapists that this is a frozen shoulder, they'll sometimes be quite specific about the timeframes that to expect or what to expect. They give that sometimes even as a handout that can be quite prescriptive over this is what you've got, this is what to expect, batten down the hatches, it's going to be sore to sleep for a bit, but don't worry, it'll go away. Now, if they've misdiagnosed it, that's another level of wrong. But even to do it that way, when there's such a very varied experience, from what I understand, and the evidence plays out, so is that one of the things that's sort of fueling your fire under this title and topic?
Absolutely. So I think, you know, I see, you know, frozen shoulder sometimes being, well, first of all, it's a bit of a throwaway diagnosis and it's used too quickly, too often. But then people who are given frozen shoulders are normally given very poor advice, and their hands, the therapists wash their hands of them, and the healthcare system tends to wash their hands of them. And they normally tell them things like, it will just get better, you just got to sit it out and it will sort itself out. That's spontaneous resolution advice. And I think frozen shoulders need a lot more help and support and guidance from healthcare. And I think it's one of the areas that say that we very much do as therapists undertreat. You know, I almost see it as a bit of a paradox, because us physios, we like to tend to overtreat things, don't we? We like to tend to get involved and see things a lot. But when it comes to the more complex, difficult conditions, we tend to undertreat them because they are harder work. They require more effort. And say it's a bit of a paradox that I'm trying to rectify. I'm trying to say to therapists, you know, let's be more sensible with our time and resources, and let's not overtreat things that have favorable natural histories that probably don't need it, but let's focus our attention on things that perhaps don't have favorable natural histories. And frozen shoulder has this misrepresentation of being a condition that has a favorable natural history. But when you actually look into the literature, it doesn't really. It needs that guidance, it needs that support, it needs that motivation, it needs that encouragement. And again, I think, you know, the information and the education is the first part of that. And that is just the bit that I think goes horrendously wrong at the beginning. And I think sometimes it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When somebody says this shoulder is going to be sore and painful for 2 years, it's going to be sore and painful for 2 years. And so I think sometimes, as I say, patients just want to be educated truthfully and honestly, but I do think there has to be some sort of leeway there of being open and optimistic as well.
Yeah, that's one of the tough challenges, isn't it? We want to be accurate with a prognostic, but then also we don't want to be labeling someone or burdening them with those time frames. similarly, we all look seriously foolish when they're inaccurate in either direction.
Absolutely. When there's uncertainty, I say when you're in doubt, and pass that doubt on to the patients. And that's what I say to a lot of frozen shoulders is that actually we don't know much about it. You know, we really don't know how this is going to go. So let's see how it goes. Let's take this under our wing and let's look at it. Let's manage it and let's see how it goes. I think, you know, giving some rough timelines, but again, deal with the uncertainty. I think is something that we've just got to be a bit better as healthcare professionals.
But what settings do you put the ultrasound machine on?
It's pulse shortwave, Jack. Come on. Everybody knows you have to do real high dose pulse shortwave for frozen shoulders. God,
that would have been a better joke, wouldn't it? Pulse shortwave. They used to put them on shoulders more often than ultrasound, didn't they? But I'd even forgotten they even existed. They're probably still out there, though, aren't they?
There's one floating around somewhere, I'm sure. Yeah.
Before I try and put the what we've come to realise is live on air, me and Jim have just been sending messages to each other. I'll admit this. We wanted to leak the timetable, and then I realised that the only timetables we have all the speakers' email addresses on, and that would be unprofessional even by our standards. So that wouldn't be very good. So we've been trying to work out, do we have a copy? I think we do. But one of the things I did want to announce before we announce the panelists for each of these, but there's the MSK Reform. I've got a stream called Thinking in Public, in which we've got 7 panels across the day talking about some of the issues that we feel are most pertinent, not just because of the circumstances and moments in time following the manifesto and things that have come up from that, but also some of the things post-COVID that we think need to be talked about. And so we've got panels of experts discussing these themes openly and honestly. And so I thought I'd announce those first. And certainly I'd like to get, you guys are all people that certainly pay a lot of attention to and care about those broader issues. So I'd be interested in seeing what your thoughts are, see if it changes your mind as to how you'll be spending your day. The first talk is rehabilitation, understanding, funding and delivering it. We've then got, is it time for competency-based MSK recruitment? This notion of not monopolizing roles under particular job titles and professions having the monopoly on that. So if someone is competent, should they be able to be employed under that role? Then what factors will affect MSK service design post-COVID? Then we've got, what does the future hold for MSK clinical placements? Ensuring and commissioning MSK care post-COVID. We've got some really interesting voices on that from across industry. And then finally, did we lose the patient voice before it was even heard? Heard some really interesting takes on that from patient advocates that feel that at a time where they could have really brought something to the table, they were then overlooked at a time of crisis. And certainly their voices felt like they were drowned out. So we're going to have a panel discussing the way in which we can best integrate that. So those are MSK in the MSK reform stream, in which we've got them panel discussions. Any thoughts on that, gang?
Which one is Matthew White delivering?
Why is that one you're going to avoid? Is that the
avoid that one?
Is it? He's doing the competency-based recruitment, so you're going to be avoiding that to avoid.
Avoiding that one, I think.
Fair enough. Any other?
I think I'll try and cut the last one. There was an article in the HSJ this week from the director of the Patient Association saying just that, how at a time when crisis hit, we had to transform and innovate. The people who quite patiently stepped aside and had their care impacted on to allow us to support core services weren't involved in that decision making. And I think there was a warning cast of, as we look to innovate and transform post-COVID, for us not to think that us as clinicians and managers and leaders have all the answers about what that innovation and what good looks like post-COVID is in the future. So I think that last stream will be one that I'll definitely be tuning into.
No, great. I think one of the things, and I've not been able to verify this, but I heard on the grapevine that a couple of patient directors and patient leaders that were employed part-time within services and trusts that had been trying to integrate their voices, when this all hit, there were 2 of them that I'd heard had been offered furlough. So in a time where everyone was being redeployed, all hands on deck, it was like, well, it's not really for you at the moment, and it was just this highlight of offence as to the fact that their voices were somewhat, they felt being sort of used as a token voice rather than something that was truly integrated. So hopefully we can discuss some of those issues openly. So anything else? Anyone else for any of those?
I'm going to try and make the competency-based recruitment one. There's been, you and I certainly have talked a lot to different professions more recently and changed our opinions over the last 18 months or so about, you know, the quality in other professions, and I think we've probably been too dismissive prior to that. And people like Rob Bevan, who's speaking in the spinal stream, is a classic example of that, of a chiropractor who is exceptionally good with spines and with contemporary practice. So I think I'll definitely be pitching over to that one to see how that conversation goes, because I do think we need to open the professions up to a degree. And if you've got, doesn't matter what certificate's on your wall, if you've got the skill set and the qualification appropriately and the training to do it, then why shouldn't you, as an osteopath or a chiropractor, if you're miles better and more qualified at treating a spine, why should someone who's got a physiotherapy degree who isn't get that job ahead of you? So I think I'll definitely be going into that one for support.
Yeah, we've got representatives from the Society of Sports Therapy, the British Chiropractic Association, and the British Association of Sports Rehabilitators joining Matthew Wyatt.
Reiki healers?
Say again?
You got any Reiki healers turning up?
Only you, Adam. You're our only Reiki healer. We know that you were very protective of that title, so only you on the Reiki front, mate. I'm afraid no. There is a line though, isn't there? I mean, Reiki's such a brilliant example. Reiki and homeopathy is like the go-to gag, isn't it? Because it's such an obvious thing in which we're talking about being multi-professional, but yeah, it would be completely bizarre if we suddenly then dealt them in. So yeah, we won't be doing that. But there's definitely a conversation to be had about what is the level of entry, and I think it's something that should be important. What I would want to do now is, now that we've found a thing that doesn't have everyone's email addresses on it, so I'm going to try and share that screen and see if we can talk through it. We're definitely not going to be able to do all of it. Let's see. Is that sharing screen? Can you see that? I might need to zoom in a bit more, will I? Have a look over here then. Pelvic Health, Elaine Miller, Emma Brockwell, Grania Donnelly, Marlies DeVivo, Melissa Farmer, Sandra Hilton. Told you it was ugly. We've got a good one out tomorrow, I promise. But looking across, you might want to see some of the clashes. Seth O'Neill on at the same time as Ash James, Adam Meakins, Paul Coker.
There's only one winner there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Elaine Miller. Yeah.
Insane, haven't we? Nina Schmid on at the same time as Claire Minshall. And Matthew Scarsbrook, that's where Adam said he's going to be. Obviously, we've got a few, apart from a brief time in lunch where we at least need to eat, then we have tried to mix it up so that the lunches sort of vary. So there's always a room open apart from at lunchtime. Ian Griffiths on at the same time as Benno Matthews, Uzo Ekiog. We then have, who's competing here? Tom Jessen on at the same time as Joe Gibson. They're two names that have been touted as people looking forward to them. So we're going to have some broken hearts for the fact that they clash. But I will. This is your first look. Trust us, guys. Don't be taking screenshots. Don't worry. We will get this out to you ASAP tomorrow in a far better format. Say again, Meakins.
Are the talks being recorded though, mate?
Yeah, well, that's been a big challenge. Is that we have got the facility to do it, but you can imagine then we've got terabytes worth of data that we've got to try and then process it and get out there, which is a big task, as well as a costly one. So we have, the answer is yes. The format is being worked on. About 2 weeks, 10 days before the event, we'll announce how we're going to be able to do that and the facility for people to be able to do that. But yeah, the whole point of this event was because we were frustrated by the amount of education waste that was going to happen by events that weren't going to take place. And it was at a time where we think we really need to pay attention to MSK practice and get the best and brightest voices out there whilst we all reboot our practice and think about it, how it phases into a brave new world, the need for virtual rehabilitation to be integrated and continue to be integrated. And so it felt silly for us to then work it up on that model and then potentially succumb to some wastage. So we have come up with a way in which we can do that. But the details of it are still a little bit thin on the ground because we're still trying to work out how to best do it. Because one of the dangers, as you can imagine, is that we can do it, but we can do it once the horse has bolted. It takes us 2 weeks to put it together. So we're thinking up a way in which we can potentially have that available that weekend and see if people can get access to those recordings, so there's no wastage. So no, it's a good question, and one we've been asked an awful lot. So yeah, if you want to see that timetable far more than that 5 seconds I've just shared it, then you will be getting that tomorrow across all social media. Get your final questions in, guys, for the panel if you haven't already. My phone is glitching like crazy, so forgive me if I've missed any of your questions. We've got a comment here from Oliver Sell saying 2 students on virtual clinic placements, one of them from Sheffield, and I think there's a lot of interest in that. It's going to be definitely part of what gets discussed in the MSKR room about what is the future of MSK placements. It's going to be a lot of that about how effective and efficient the virtual placements can be, and I know there's a lot of those going on at the moment. Really looking forward to it, because the challenges that the students are facing is unprecedented, in part because of the way in which their education has been disrupted, but also some of how much should we, and is it smart to compromise the amount of hours that they need to do in practice? And is it going to be then measured as to whether or not that then suffers downstream into the profession? You know, is there going to be a compromised education? And especially in a state where they're now paying for that education at a time where for years that was sort of government funded through bursary. It's a really complex issue, and so we really feel for the students that are having to deal with that, and we're loving to hear from you. You know, lots of people getting in touch with us, as well as students that will be on that panel as well. So yeah, thank you for your comment, Oliver. Really interested to hear about it. Mike James has said he should be over the moon that competency-based practice is finally being discussed, but he does feel shine's been taken off by the news about the patient voices being lost. That's something that's interesting, is that sometimes we make progress in one area, but then hear news of backward steps in others. There is something, I think there's more of a hunger for people to hear other interprofessional voices than there are for patient integration of the patient voice. It seems like it's a more palatable thing to hear from other professionals. It just feels like you don't have to change tempo and style of talk really when you go into professional, and sometimes the understanding of how we can best integrate all voices into it makes a lot more sense. So no, thank you for your comments, guys. What I wanted to do is to finally just pull up the screen one more time of not the agenda, the talks for this Upper Limbposium. Honestly, as many people have noticed, a real who's who of personnel that we've managed to pull together that are kindly speaking at the event for your learning entertainment. And so please do join and make sure that you get onto the stream bright and early. It'll be open from 8 o'clock, and it's a micro site in which you'll be able to explore a variety of different things, including lots of innovative technologies that people are bringing to the fore to help you in practice in this brave new world. There's some great companies that were otherwise struggling to bring things like apps and software that they were developing to try and help you in clinical practice that they were otherwise not able to show at in-person expos and events this year, that we're going to be able to give a platform to, as well as integrating it into this education stream, which is going to be fantastic, especially when it comes to rehabbing people virtually. It's something that some people have been au fait with for quite a while, but it does present itself with some challenges. Adam, I wanted to just ask you on that with regards to the virtual piece. You've been doing quite a lot of that over time, as well as trying to help educate folk with some webinars through the Better Clinician project in recent times. How well do you feel uptake has been on virtual, and how similar is it? How compatible is it with people's standard practice?
It's been very popular, obviously, because of the situation and the context has been forcing people to look at new ways of working. So it's been incredibly popular. So when we first put the idea out there, me and Ben, because we've been doing online consultations for a number of years, and we said, look, we'll tell you what we know and what our lessons learned have been, come and join us. We got totally oversubscribed, so we had to do it another 2 more times. So we did 3 of them in total. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot of fear. There was a lot of uncertainty. It's like anything, you know, something that's different. It tends to worry people. It gives a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. But actually, I think, you know, we managed to put our views across that, you know, online consultations are different. You know, they are not the same as a face-to-face consultation. There are limitations, but then there's also benefits and positives as well. So it's yin and yang. It's, you know, it's 6 of one and 2 3s of the other. So we very much tried to put, you know, a reasoned voice across it to say, look, these are the things you are obviously going to be limited with and can't do, but then look at all the other benefits and the bonuses that you can do with online consultations. So yeah, it went well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the tricks really, is that to not pretend that it's the same. It's that it's got its pros, it's got its cons, and on balance, especially because of the circumstances, it's a necessity. But I think the way in which there's a lot of talk about, we've got to make sure that we, both for safety and for the sense of making things more efficient, is that we've got to try and look at how to dovetail face-to-face and virtual care more effectively in the future. For green issues, if nothing else, we were building a lot of the infrastructure for Therapy Live ahead of the pandemic, in part because, you know, decreasing the amount of travel and hotels and stuff for educational shows, but also virtual consultations, of course, have a number of different benefits, you know, societally, for access, as well as anything, as well as the green factors that I mentioned there. Joe, Val, Andrew,
as well.
Say again, pal.
And you can do it in your underpants as well, which is the best benefit ever.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, none of us have stood up. Yeah, that's always quite telling.
Don't want me to, trust me.
One of the things that there's going to be lots of, in fact, we're going to be running a competition on the day of the show for selfies at the Therapy Live desk. That's certainly something that we're looking forward to. Put a filter on that and get people sending us their hopefully tasteful pictures of them in their PJs or joggers or potentially their Speedos or whatever Adam's going to be wearing for Therapy Live. So, Joe, Val, Andrew, virtual consultations, how have you got on with them?
Great. Yeah, it's just been a new experience, but yeah, they've gone really well. I've got patients from ridiculous, like all over the place now, which I would never have had access to before. So it's been great.
Is there, how many times do you encounter something where you're just like, the conversations, especially subjectively, has gone as similarly as it maybe would do, and then you're just like really wanting to be able to do a particular test or get your hands on or do something that's really difficult to simulate virtually, or is that just not occurring?
I think you just approach it differently. So no, I think you just have to be a bit creative if you need to know a little bit more information. But no, to be honest, it's been, I mean, I've done them over the years anyway, just not as much as I'm doing at the moment. And it's certainly the online stuff where you can see people. It's been much more successful than I necessarily thought it would be, with more patients than I thought it would be. So yeah, it's been in a real learning experience, actually.
No, that's great. I mean, we've got Katie Napton, who's my go-to specialist in virtual consultation, having been doing it over 3 years exclusively virtually, and a great clinician outright, but certainly someone that we wanted to get on the show to sort of offer that really particular take. But I know that various different clinical sessions are going to involve people mentioning about how to give that virtual angle to it as well, to try and help people prepare for it. Val, one of the patients that I saw fairly early in lockdown that I was in that situation, it's one of the biases of my question really, was that I was assessing an elbow, and it was paining me it was really valuable for me to know the end feel of that particular part of their range, right? It was an elbow, it was a stiff elbow being described as such. And it was sort of, is that just terminal? I wanted to feel that terminal extension to try and comprehend it. So I want to ask you the same sort of question. Are you encountering those sorts of moments or less so?
Not really, no. I mean, I think sort of you can always, the end feel, I'm not quite sure how sort of valid that is as to what's going on pathology wise anyway. I mean, I saw a young lady the other week who'd first time I'd seen her, and she'd had failed surgery and then successful surgery after that. And I think it's preparation is the key. Sort of, she made sure that she'd sent me over copies of her x-rays beforehand, because she was a private patient, and then some of the clinic notes, which was really useful. So you kind of had an idea what you were dealing with, and then how can I get her to sort of reproduce the symptoms? How can we then test her functionally? What can we do? So I found that prep was the key with me, and making sure that I'd really sort of got everything in front of me when I actually opened the consultation up.
No, that's great. I think one of the things is with like my point on MPhil is like the amount of stuff that you do because you feel almost that's what you usually do. You know, when I came to realize, like, of course, in my reasoning, I didn't necessarily need to miss it, but you felt like, because I would normally do that with it as part of my assessment, is that essential? Is that going to really inform the differential diagnosis, etc.? And in that case, it was something. Say again, sorry.
What's stiff?
No, it's true. How much can you trust your hands anyway? I suppose. No, I totally accept that. Andrew, what's been your experience with the sort of virtual side of things? How have you got on?
Sure, and just to some conversation really, my experience is echo Joe, Adam and Val's, and having used it privately for a number of years, there's always been a bit different when somebody chooses to use a virtual means. They're more likely to buy into it. And as an employee of Connect, where we've used telephone consultations in various guises for many years, 80-85% of our patients really enjoy it, but 10-15% don't like it at all. And primary care sometimes don't like it at all when we move into new areas. So what's been really interesting is how the public health and the public narrative around virtual consultations has shifted, as well as primary care kind of opinions around virtual consultations have shifted. They can see how, although it's been forced upon us at the moment, in terms of percentages, we're probably doing more virtual consults than we would necessarily like or will carry on to do in the future. I think we're all agreed we'll probably be doing more than we were doing previously. And I think we'll have more patients and GPs, primary care, other specialities, they can see the value as well.
No, that's fantastic. No, thank you very much. I've just been made aware of the time and I'm sorry we've gone over there. I'm certainly starving for my tea as well, especially now I've just noticed the time. Thank you so much, Joel, for joining us. That's the Upper Limbposium Speakers for Therapy Live, 26th of June, 2020, only 3 working weeks away. So much choice, full agenda out tomorrow across social media. On the website, we'll send you all an email as well. Around approaching 15,000 delegates already. And so if you haven't already got a ticket, you're one of only a few. So please do make sure you get that absolutely free at the point of use. And also then the recordings being made available afterwards as cheaply as we can once we've worked out that infrastructure, which we will announce the details of very shortly. But thank you all so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Always great to catch up with you. And we'll see you virtually, of course, on the 26th. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
All right.